Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. President Volodymyr Zelensky has said the war in Ukraine began with Crimea and must end with its liberation.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці.
Ukraine's president was speaking after a string of explosions hit a Russian airbase there, killing one person. Mr. Zelensky did not mention Tuesday's blasts, but said Crimea is Ukrainian and we will never give it up. Russia's defense ministry said ammunition detonated at the base. Meanwhile, Ukraine denied any responsibility for the explosions. In a separate development, Ukrainian officials say 13 people were killed in overnight Russian strikes in the central Dnipropetrovsk region and another one in the Zaporizhia region in the south. Provisional results suggest a tight presidential race in Kenya between Deputy President William Ruto and the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. With more than 90% of results posted from thousands of individual districts, local tallies of the raw data suggest little separates the pair. However, it could be several days before the official result is known. This vote follows an intense campaign dominated by debates about living costs, unemployment and corruption. Turnout is estimated to be around 60%, well short of the 80% in the last election 5 years ago. A largely peaceful election day was marred by logistical delays and a failure of the identification kit in some parts of the country. Taiwan's defense ministry has released a video of anti-invasion exercises by its armed forces in response to China's recent display of military power around the self-ruled island. The footage showed multiple warships from China and Taiwan sailing at close quarters in the Taiwan Strait. Chinese warships were seen including frigate Anyang and Manshan. The island's defense ministry said multiple Chinese military ships, aircraft and drones were simulating attacks on the island and its navy. It said it had sent aircraft and ships to react appropriately. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has met with Prime Minister of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Jean-Michel Sama Lukonde, in Kinshasa ahead of his trip to neighbouring Rwanda.
It's a pleasure to be here.
During a joint press conference with Congo's foreign minister, Blinken said he discussed reforms to Congo's mining sector and US concerns over the auction of oil and gas exploration blocks close to sensitive rainforest and wetland areas. Congo on Tuesday agreed to establish a working group with the United States to discuss the environmental impact of the auctions.
Working on so many different things with the Prime Minister, following up on the discussions that we had yesterday with the President. I think the agenda that we have is proof of the breadth and depth of the partnership between the United States and the DRC, a partnership, as we've called it, for peace, for prosperity, for preservation of the environment.
Wildfires continue to rage across southwestern France, destroying 16 houses and burning 6,000 hectares, forcing the evacuation of almost 6,000 people. Video released by French emergency services showed fire crews driving on a road flanked by burning woodland on both sides. In a social media post attached to the video, the French fire service described a return to the inferno, referencing the fact that the area had already been hit last month by huge blazes. The department of Gironde in southwestern France was hit in July by 2 wildfires which destroyed more than 20,000 hectares of forest and led to the evacuation of almost 40,000 people. A beluga whale that became stranded in France's Seine River has had to be put down, ending a dramatic rescue mission that captivated world audiences. Officials say vets took the decision as the 4-metre mammal was being moved in a refrigerated truck. Overnight, rescuers spent nearly 6 hours lifting the 800-kilogram whale from the river using a crane and nets. They had planned to release the animal into the sea, but its health deteriorated after failing to eat. And finally, members of Mexico's indigenous communities have taken to the streets of the capital to celebrate their heritage and demand more rights. Their Mexico City march marked the United Nations Day of the World Indigenous Peoples. A spokesman for the march said 18 indigenous communities took part in the celebration. Among those taking part were indigenous groups from the southwestern state of Oaxaca, such as Triqui, Mazatec and Zapotec, as well as groups from the southern Chiapas state. They wore traditional clothing as they marched down Reforma Avenue in the city centre. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.